Good morning again. It's raining again. Storming, actually. Honestly, we need the rain, although I'm not a fan of my basement flooding. So, I mean, it didn't flood too bad, but, you know, after I did this last video, I went down to my basement and was like, I wonder if this water is gonna overwhelm the sump pump. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh, thank goodness I'm down here and I can move some things around. But it stopped before it reached anything as well. I just kind of was pushing it back. So, but yeah, it worked out. The reason I'm able to do these right now is not only are my children at school, but my stepdaughter, who is 19, is also not in the house. I kid you not, and it is very frustrating. At the same time, I love her, and part of it's part of her own trauma. Her way of asking for attention is to randomly just show up. She can hear me talking to somebody, and the moment she thinks I'm giving anybody else attention, she's right here. She would literally think that me talking to this is me being on the phone with somebody, and she wants to know who it is. She just wants to be included. The idea of not being included bothers her. She'll act like she's introverted and she's stuck in her room and she's like, oh, I don't want to deal with the world. Oh no, she'd be the first one to jump out of there. I'd be like, hey, you want to go to the store? Yes! Please take me. She is staying with her biological mother's mom at the moment. Her grandma, real grandma, is not entirely wheelchair bound, but she needs it in order to get around. So, you know, her mobility is limited. And honestly, it's not even so much her going over there to help her, you know, with things, as it is her grandmother also has extensive trauma as well, where she's a very sweet lady. However, her emotions are very overwhelming. She's not toxic, but she also will sacrifice in order to keep relationships. I hate it. To them, this would sound like I'm talking bad about them, even when I'm not. I'm just explaining how they are. They know how they are. I mean, it's not even like they're not aware. They are totally aware. And you know, her mom, so great grandma, is still living as well, and she is the healthcare worker for her daughter, so my stepdaughter's grandma. So the elder, so mom is taking care of daughter, basically, in their twilight years. Unfortunately, great grandma's very controlling. I don't know her a background with trauma. I wouldn't doubt that there is some. I wouldn't doubt it at all. But for her, she's almost numb to emotion. She's more about keeping things in order, and being very matter of fact, but there's no real tied emotion to it. For example, when my stepdaughter's mother, lightning, died, like I said, it was a process. Somebody stole the ashes, and I mean stole. The woman who took them, wow, that's some thunder. The woman who took them claimed to be a relative. She wasn't a relative. She signed herself off as the informant. She had the mom cremated, and then she took custody of the ashes. I mean, it was it was real quick. And that's because she took advantage of mom when mom was in the hospital and under heavy sedation from a surgery where she needed a metal plate put in her back. And so this woman went up there with a set of papers that looked, fancy enough to be court papers. And she had mom sign them and hand over all her debit cards and everything else. This is where I didn't realize the extent of it. And I tried to stay out of it until it affected my stepchildren. My youngest stepchild was still living with mom when she died. And when I got him, he received a disability payment for his mental health. And when I checked the bank account, it wasn't just empty, it was negative. And the money started disappearing 6 months prior to mom's death. And that is when she obtained the cards. That is when mom had the back surgery. And this woman was formally charged with theft. And part of the deal, she stole about $6,000. I'm not joking. From this kid's account. Not to mention she took everything else. Literally. When an aunt actually saw her tossing all the mom's things on the sidewalk, the aunt tried to collect some of the things, especially the children's toys, and this woman called the police and said, look, I have this stack of papers that says I have power of attorney, and apparently police don't understand power of attorney ends. One, it's not even a legit paperwork. It wasn't filed with the courts, so it wasn't even real. And it was dated after mom died. Red flag, but the cops looked at it and said, this looks legit. They also don't know that power of attorney ends when somebody dies. There is no more power of attorney. Thank goodness for Judge Wallace, who was able to look at that and go, what is this? This isn't real, because she tried to take my stepson from me, as well as his half-sister, and she kidnapped that child for about a year too. I had to help the father file for custody of his own child. He's on the birth certificate. It didn't even compute to me how this was possible. The police actually told him he had to file custody for his own child who was kidnapped by this woman. And the judge, when I filed, said, children aren't property. Well, you can't will them away. She claimed to have some will. And he's like, you cannot will a child away. You cannot, they are not property. They are a person. And there are legal standards for custody. Okay? And she kidnapped this child for a year, subjected her to trauma herself. Poor little thing. She's about the same age as my youngest. She's going to be 7 here in a few days. Whew. Bad enough her mom she dies from cancer, but bad enough that happens. Bad enough the mom actually was highly also abusive. And I know that sounds very controversial, me protecting her, but honestly, I was just protecting my stepchildren because it's still their mother. It doesn't matter to them what she did to them. She died. There's nothing more she can do to them. They're working through their trauma with what she did do to them. But she died. And it was horrible for all of them. My stepdaughter's biggest problem with the whole thing was she wanted to have a relationship with her mom. And her mom pushed her away. It seems like it doesn't even compute to the point where Children's Services didn't even believe it. Whenever they would get calls that this woman was literally dishing her children at the hospital and saying, I don't want them, or she was beating them, or she called 911 herself and said, I don't want this child, she would say, I had to beat him. I had to, throw him across the room, whatever. The police believed her. Don't ask me why. Because I don't know. In her mind, I'll tell you what, one documentary that I'm going to cry just because I'm thinking about it. Whew. I promised myself I'd try and keep myself together for 90% of this. Gabriel Fernandez from California, whose teacher, who, a security guard at the welfare office. Everybody called child services. And child services even went in there and they would scold the kid for saying, how dare you say bad things about your mom. One of the cops did the two. He scared the bejesus out of the child. And the child actually went to school. And I'll never forget that teacher, testimony where she said, he came up to me and he said, I'm not going to tell you anything anymore. Because every time I do, I get beat. Because he's too afraid to say anything. I mean, Jesus Christ. He was covered in bruises. He had burn marks on him. I mean, she took a picture of this kid in school making a Mother's Day card. Okay. And he's black and blue. This is the problem I have with child services. They believe the abuser is very easy because the abuser knows the system. That's how messed up it is. If you actually call and make a report, the reporters know these people abuse the system. They also know how to point the finger at somebody else. It is very easy. And all they gotta do is tell the kid something. And it's not even the classic, don't say anything or I'll hurt you type talk. In my stepchildren's cases, they were convinced that if they lied, they were protecting people, namely their siblings. It was, you're doing a good thing by making something up. You're doing a good thing by saying that this person abused you, because if you do that, you're protecting them. So they did it because they loved each other. Such twisted shit. In the end, when Mom died of cancer, she actually told my youngest stepson it was his fault. On her page that still exists on Facebook, by the way, if you ever look it up. Her name is Catherine Clark. In her Facebook page, it is Kitty Faith. If you look up her profile and you find her Catherine's Butterfly group and you actually get into it and you can read the archived information, she makes posts deliberately blaming the child for her ailments. She says, I forgive my son. He did this to me. And you know what people's responses were? Oh, I'm so sorry for you. I'm so sorry that you went through that. Oh, it's okay. I'm so sorry your son's so out of control. Like, I can read that and go, what are you doing? But people believed her. And now she has a total of 4 children. 3 by my husband, and the last one to another man who I had so thankfully obtained 2 attorneys who were willing to actually do this pro bono, because it was just that outrageous. Like, I called them and they're just like, no, that can't be. And I said, yeah, it is. Here, let me, I have the police reports. It literally says he has to call 911. He's calling 911. The mom is dead. She's stolen my child. I need to get my child. And they say, file a custody order. Why? It's his kid. There was a prior custody arrangement between mom and dad where dad was associated and given partial custody. Why do you have to file against a stranger who has stolen your child? I was so... This one not even makes me sad. This makes me mad. Because it was one of those in your face. And you try and tell people this, and they don't believe you. Because it's just that unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense. The idea that someone can take your child and then say, I'm going to raise it. I'm going to be a relative with no proof. I mean, zero. They're not even, the police aren't even around to talk to mom. It's not even like they talked to her beforehand. It was, oh, look, she has a stack of papers and it's dated and wrongly. But they're not looking at that. It just looks like a legit stack of papers. And it was bull. The whole thing. A year that child sat in that house. And when the judge actually finally gave the child back to dad and told her, you have no rights to this child, he also said to her, thanks for taking care of her for the last year. Like, why are you thanking her? She stole that child. Like, you're judge, you're even giving the child to the dad, saying that she has no rights at all, ever, never did, and she can't withhold the child from him, and you're saying thanks in the same sentence. And then my hearing. When it came to my hearing for having her criminally charged for what she did, they charged her with 10 counts of, I believe, well, it's a theft by credit card, basically, because she went to the bank, and then the next day she would go to the bank and she would max out all the withdrawals, and the cop caught her in so many lies. And it was just easy. She spent $100 on Taco Bell and said, oh, it was all for my stepson. Like, the cop and I found that highly amusing. Everybody we talked about, it's like, who eats $100 worth of Taco Bell? One, Taco Bell is pretty cheap. And two, nobody eats that much. $100 worth of Taco Bell by himself. And she'd be like, oh, he's a big kid. He's tall. He's not heavy. And yeah, he eats a lot. No one's going to eat $100 worth of Taco Bell. That's, And he wasn't even with her when she was taking all this money. He was with this grandmother that my stepdaughter is at right now. He was over there. That woman was helping to take care of him while mom was dying. She also, like I said, although she does, unfortunately, add a little bit of stress to the kids because of her own trauma, she likes to overshare with them. She was their safe spot. Dad and I couldn't get them, because child services wouldn't listen to us. It wasn't until my stepdaughter was 12 that she started speaking up. And she wasn't even living with mom at the time. She was living with another person who was just as evil. It's hard to talk about it. Because that woman's still alive. She's never been charged. My stepchildren, who are now adults, except the youngest, who is 17, have all spoken up. It's documented. My 17-year-old stepson is in a residential treatment facility right now. That is how bad his trauma is. He acts out in ways like a 5-year-old would, but he looks like a grown man. He's caused harm to people he can't comprehend other people's feelings. He can't. That's our biggest working progress right now. He has charges, felony charges, from his last one, where he actually went after the resource officer. His mother's abuse is not an excuse. It cannot be used as one. However, we all understand it. His therapist witnessed it. They would report it. Nothing got done. Nothing changed. Nobody listened. And here's the result. We have 3 children thank God the youngest was only about 2 when Mom died. And although she started beating the child, hopefully most of those memories are not there. I hope every day that they're not. But when it comes to the 3 older ones, not only do they have the complex post-traumatic stress disorder, they have reactive attachment disorders. They also have ADHD, which is genetic in their family. You know, that one's not a big deal. But reactive attachment disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, those things are created. You are not born with those things. Reactive attachment disorder is another one that is difficult for people to understand. It is a disorder that is created by, having no attachments, basically when you're young. Our basic instinct when we have our children is to comfort them and to take care of their needs and, make sure what's best for them is what's best for them. Some parents, feel the cry it out thing. I'm not for that as an infant, because infants don't have the ability to just say, I'm going to cry for no reason. They're crying because they need something. That's why they're crying. You're supposed to attend to it immediately, and the faster you attend to it, actually, the less they'll cry, because they know you're going to take care. They've built a trust with you. The cry it out method usually isn't until they're like 3 or 4. And even then, there's a limit. I'm not about coddling children. I have spanked my child. Only in extreme circumstances. Like they're about to get hurt really bad. And then they go and try and do it again. Like you tried the talking method, it doesn't work. They're about to go and do it again. So, and literally it's like one swat on the behind. It's not abuse. A lot of people, they get really worked up about that because they remember, like I do, where I was getting beat with a belt. And there's a difference between discipline and punishment. When it comes to discipline, you're learning something. There is a purpose to it. It's not, I'm hitting you because I'm mad. That's punishment. It is, I am going to punish you because you pissed me off. You've done something wrong. For discipline, it's more of it's a learning experience. And you're not doing it to hurt them. It's just, hate to use this one. If you touch a hot stove, are you going to touch it again? No! Because you got hurt. Fear is actually one of the biggest things that are instilled into our minds. And it is the most difficult emotion to break. Which is why we have complex post-traumatic stress disorder and, just regular PTSD. Those things are there because of fear. It is, you got hurt way too many times, or you got hurt really bad, that you're not going to forget it. It is now a reaction. I still, even with all my EMDR training, as you've seen in previous videos if you've watched them, my emotions are still high. I take medication, yet my emotions are still high. Honestly, it would probably be a lot worse if I didn't take my medication. So that's why I take them. And I wouldn't be able to function. I mean, honestly, I asked for the medication. I was never for it. Very, very against it when I was younger. Because again, as I think I've said before, the idea of going to a therapist was considered, you're crazy. So you just didn't do it. You tried to stay away from it. And the first therapists I ever was around actually were very judgmental and bossy. It was, you shared a problem and they told you what to do with it. And if you didn't want to do what they said, well, then you're an idiot. Thanks! I mean, yeah, I wasn't going back to those therapists. Thankfully, I have one that listens. And therapy isn't what it once was. If you ever get a therapist that is like that, leave. Because, you know, it's best to have a therapist that is in sync with you, with your morals. Actually, I was going to be teamed up with somebody else, but my children were seeing a therapist in the same building, and I told her, you know, I was going to be seeing this therapist, and she said, no, I know you, and that therapist would not be a good fit for you. I'm going to find somebody that is like-minded like you. And she did. And I'm so thankful for that, because I love my therapists. They're great. Anyway, so reactive attachment disorder is a very complicated disorder. It can come out in many different forms. I have 3 stepchildren. They have it in different formations. As I said before, my stepdaughter will come out here because she's looking for attention. She'll pretend she's not, but she is. She asks me every day, what day is it? What time is it? What is on the calendar? Literally, I have a clock. It's right there. The calendar is around the bend. Okay? It's right there. She stands right in front of it. Right there. Because her room is through that door. So she comes out, she stands right there. And she says, what time is it? I just look at her and I'm like, what time do you think it is? I've learned to, you know, I'm trying to break her of it. Because I know that it annoys me, and therefore it's going to annoy the crap out of anybody else. I can tolerate her. I can deal with her because I understand her. I know what she went through because I went through it with her. I went through it with her brothers. So I will look at her and say, well, what time is it? And she'll say, I don't know, I can't read a clock. Yes, you can. Yes, she can. She likes to play dumb because she wants you to talk to her. This is her way of making communication because she doesn't know how to start a normal conversation. I have tried to teach her. I have had her in multiple therapists. The one therapist that was the greatest, who was working with her when her mom was dying, actually died herself. And I cried about that one because that therapist was wonderful. She was a trauma therapist, very specialized. She had the unique view of all 3 households, where my stepdaughter used to be with the other relative, where my eldest stepson still was, because he was still with that same woman that my stepdaughter left, and then their moms and us. She had a view into all 3 households. She had the access to see what was wrong, and she knew. And she reported it, and no one listened to her either. After a while, you just don't even want to call. It's like, why? Because every time you call, they call right back. And they'll make something up. When their mother died, and this is going to sound sick, because it was. To me, it was. When their mother died, and we couldn't even put her to rest, because this woman stole the ashes. And then she stole the little girl. My stepson, when I first got custody of him, sole custody, and he moved in with me, and we were talking with the officer about the money that this woman had stolen. By the way, this woman is best friends with the other abuser that's still alive. Isn't that lovely? Literally, she showed up at the courthouse, and I was like, telling the cop, even before I walked out to the door, I was like, there's only one other person I've ever dealt with that is this evil. And I walk out, she's sitting there. And I looked back at the cop and I said, they're together. No way! Like, you can't any more ironic than that. Anyway. Their mom died. My stepson moves in. We're talking with the cop about the theft. He's telling us about how this woman was doing drugs. in front of him and the little girl and blowing it in their face. And I'm talking about marijuana. They did other things as well. And I know weed isn't a big deal, but you don't blow it in kids' faces, okay? Anybody who smokes recreational, whatever, you know, you don't blow it around your kids. You know what that does. But she was doing it. She thought it was funny to watch the little 2-year-old fall because she couldn't stand up anymore. Thought it was hilarious. So the officer alerted child services. They go over there. She's not smoking in the moment. She tells a story. I didn't do that. Okay, closed case. Next thing I know, the same caseworker's coming back to my house. What now? Oh, we've received a report that your stepchildren are having sex with each other and did this during their mother's memorial in front of all the family members, and we all watched. It was like, are you fucking kidding me? The reaction, my stepchildren were right here. My stepson vomited. Like, the idea of that made him sick. And my stepdaughter ran into her room and locked the door and was just sobbing out loud. Like, their mom just died. And this... She said, the caseworker at least apologized. She said, I'm sorry. I believe it's bull. Because it doesn't make any sense. I had to call the grandmother. And say, hey, guess what happened? I need you to tell this caseworker what happened during the memorial, because apparently this woman is claiming that the children were having sex during their mother's funeral. In front of everybody. It's so gross. It's so gross. Obviously they weren't. That's the kind of stuff that people can report. Literally. And they don't get in trouble for it. There is a law on the books that says you cannot make false claims to child services. You cannot make false reports to police. You cannot do this. It literally, but because police believe that it deters, people from reporting, they won't charge anybody with it, even when it's this blatant. I mean, come on. We didn't even have her ashes. And we were at this tiny little church, itty bitty little church, that was so kind to do this memorial for the family so they could have some peace. It wasn't, it's about her, but really it's about the family. It's giving them some peace. She died. She was 38. Literally just turned. And she died. And that's their gift. My stepson talks to the police officer and tells him what it was like living with this crazy lady. This crazy lady goes to the other abusive relative, and they together call child services and accuse them of having sex with each other during their mother's funeral. And nothing gets done about it. Nope. Just re-traumatize my stepchildren all over again. Thank you. I understand child services has a job to do. However, there are laws on the books that are supposed to prevent things like this. This is not okay. Judges are fully well aware that CPS coming into your home is traumatic all by itself. Some cases aren't even investigated. Don't ask me why. If I have ever talked with any officer, like the day that my stepson did what he did to obtain the felony charges, I sat in that hospital because he was trying to kill himself at the same time. I sat there in that hospital with 3 policemen just crying, and with me. They were crying with me. Because I just said, I don't understand. I don't understand how So much bad can happen, and it gets ignored. That they're blatantly abusing the child service reporting system. The caseworker told me that's 33 times. This technically would have been probably the 35th by this point. 30 plus times of false reports, and nobody does anything. I actually filed a protection order because I didn't know what else to do. Because the law says that if there's a report made, they have to investigate it. I wish they would do that with cases that are real. Like, what's up with that? They go in, they go out, they leave. They don't even talk to the kids half the time. Because they already believe it's bull. But they walk up in my house and... oh, we need to talk to the children alone. They didn't want to talk to them. My stepdaughter is so traumatized that if a cop comes to the house, he has to be out of uniform or she will freak out. Like, literally freak out. She's balled up in the middle of the floor. She's locked herself in the bathroom. She's just, go away. I'm not talking to them. I'll hurt myself before I do. A caseworker actually went upstairs into my bathroom. Well, not into my bathroom because she locked herself in there and stood outside the door and said, I'm not leaving until you come out. I'll stay here all night. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Don't say that to her. Because all she did was scream after that. I mean, she's a grown adult now. But the damage that is done, she's not an adult up here. My stepsons, no. Mom wanted my stepdaughter to apologize to her. For what? Being born. Mom thought the children were the bearer of all her problems. It was always their fault. Never her fault. She never did anything wrong in her eyes. It was always their fault. They did something wrong. Somebody else did something wrong. Never her. She could never say that she did anything wrong. And unfortunately, that has rubbed off on my stepchildren. So when they're in situations, it is never they did anything wrong. Even my stepson, who's younger, he will cry and say he is sorry for what he has done. But if you get him to talk to a therapist, he will justify every action that he did. He's up in this facility, and he's already attacked a kid up there. He said he was sorry, and he didn't want to do it, and he felt compelled, and he was just, I was trying to manage my emotions. I was trying so hard. But then when we bring it up in his therapy sessions and say, hey, you hit this kid like a month ago, he's like, I was retaliating. I actually said to him during one of the sessions, you realize there's no retaliation clause in the law, right? There is no, he hit me, so I hit him back. By the way, this kid didn't hit him. He just yelled in his face. And my stepson said, well, I had to hit him. It's the same retaliation he uses for everything. It's always justified. To him, it's justified. This is the exact same thing his mother would do. It was, I beat them because I had to. They didn't give me any choice because of their actions. This is what she would say all the time. Sometimes she would take them to the hospital, tell them she didn't want them. They were homicidal. She actually said my stepdaughter was homicidal towards her younger sister, who she was still pregnant with. My stepdaughter has told everybody this multiple times. What was happening was mom was pregnant with the little girl. And mom started beating my stepdaughter. My stepdaughter took her knees and she put them up to her chest like this in order to keep her back. She was just, back, get back. And mom called the police and said, oh, she's trying to kick me in the stomach. She's homicidal towards her baby sister. This is not even a joke. I'm not even exaggerating this a little. Those are exactly the words she used. She said, she put her knees up and tried to kick me in the stomach. She's homicidal towards her little sister. She wants to kill her so she can replace her. So she can't replace, well, whatever. You know what I mean. She was trying to claim that she was jealous of the little girl that was about to be born. And when they questioned my stepdaughter, she said, well, I am, because mom loves her more than me. So that, mom would say, oh, see? She's homicidal. She doesn't want her sister to be born. That twisted logic. So when mom's dying of cancer, which every therapist, we all hate saying it, sounds terrible, but they were glad that she died, because they said they were going to she was going to kill those children. It was going to happen. We knew it. And everybody was going to go, oh, but child services was called. Why wasn't anything done? Well, hindsight is 20/20. I used to yell at the caseworkers, what does it take? What do they have to do? What has to happen for you guys to do anything? My stepdaughter's on the stand at 12 years old because I filed this protection order because I was tired of it. And I asked her, can you describe your living situation with not even mom, the other relative? And she said she held me down and she had my brothers kick the crap out of me. And this woman, it is a woman. It's not a male relative, it's a woman. And I don't even want to say her name right now. I'll eventually get to that. Maybe I've even slipped up a few times. She's not blood related at all. She adopted, okay, I'm going to say it. Her name is Cindy. She adopted my husband. So she is an adoptive mother. In reality, she is a married-in aunt. His uncle is blood related, and his uncle has since died in 2011. He's not there to protect my husband or any of these children. This woman's psycho. And I have no problem saying that because of what they have told me. And I believe them because it makes sense. And they've repeated the same story for years. My stepson up in this facility right now, it is documented on his paperwork. Cindy is his abuser too, because he reports that one day Cindy held down his sister, not even little sister, because technically she was older, held down her sister and instructed him to beat her while she was being held down on the floor. It is documented on his paperwork right now, out of his mouth. That is one of his traumatic moments, where literally she grabbed her by her shoulders and pushed her on the floor and said, beat her. And this woman stood up in court, looked at the judge, and she said, and you know why I did that? Because you deserved it. Why isn't she in jail? She said it. This is what bothers me a lot. And my stepdaughter cried on the stand. She just cried. And she says, I don't want you anymore. Even though a judge had already taken her away, thankfully. And unfortunately placed her with mom. And so mom had her for 9 months, and then she literally dropped her on our porch and said, I don't want her either. This is how reactive attachment disorder is created. There's no love. They're just tools. And the reason the older two got taken away in the first place was my stepdaughter was 3 days old. Dad was in jail for a fight he'd had with a roommate. He was only in there for 3 months. But in those 3 months, mom wouldn't even feed him. The house was trashed. The bills weren't paid. They said they found my older stepson in the crib in a soiled diaper with Cheerios. He's 20 years old right now. He doesn't see the benefit of having feelings for anything. an animal was gonna die. He said, just kill it, put it out of its misery. And his friends didn't want to do that. They wanted to protect the animal. They wanted to get it help. And he said, why? It's just gonna die. Just do it. And I heard his friend say, what did you want me to do? Go out in the middle of the road and drop a rock on its head? And he said, yeah. And then he got mad because the friends were offended by that. And he said, why are they taking it out on me, Jess? Why are they taking it out on me? And I said, they're not. They're hurt and they can't understand why you can't, have some empathy. Where's the empathy? And he said, this is why I don't see the point of getting attached to anything. Those two women ruined these kids. Just literally destroyed. If they even have some sense of a normal life, I will consider that a success. Right now, my stepdaughter stays with me because the idea of sending her out scares the bejesus out of me. I looked at an officer once who was telling me to kick her out because she was so out of control. And I said, if I send her out there, she's gonna die. She's so desperate for attachment, she would jump into a van with a stranger who just said hello and said, you're pretty. She doesn't know how to say no. Because she just wants to be loved. And I've tried to give her that, but it's not enough. Their mom is gone. I'm gonna overwhelm. This is honestly one of my biggest triggers is, I have my childhood, but then to watch it happen again in such a more extreme form and not having anybody listen. I felt like I was going crazy. I couldn't sit. I couldn't eat. I just kept thinking, they're getting hurt, and I can't help them. My therapist would tell me, it's not your fault. You've done everything you can. That day in court, when my stepdaughter said that on the stand, and Cindy said that back, there was a caseworker out the hallway. And I walk out. Cindy's smiling as she's going down the stairs because apparently she got to talk to the caseworker first. I don't know what she said to her. I have a gist of it because she didn't know how old I was. She said I was a victim of my husband. And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, you were young and in love, I know. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What? And Cindy had told her that my husband and I met when I was 11 and he was already 21. We are 2 years apart. Like, this woman couldn't even ask to look at my license to see that I was born in the mid-80s, and so was my husband. Like, hello? My husband is 40 years old. I'm about to be 38. I can't change my age. And she just said, well, whatever. Literally, like, it blew me off completely. And I said, did you know what that woman just said in that courtroom? I said, my stepdaughter on that stand said that woman held her down and had her brothers beat her. Kick her. The word she used, the exact word she used was kick the crap out of me. And she looked at me and smiled and said, you don't know the whole story. I said, in what universe is that okay? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, are you, what? She's like, granted, it wasn't exactly the greatest thing to do. I'm like, what the? If any time I was about to go to jail, it was that day. I broke down like this. I was sobbing. I was yelling at her like, how much damage has to be done before you do anything? And she said, you need help. And I said, excuse me? I said, I'm already seeing a therapist. And she's like, what's her name? Like, with that tone. And I told her. You know, later this woman actually got to be manager of one of the CPS groups. Like, she went on from being an ongoing caseworker to a manager. And in future cases, including the bullshit one I got whenever they died, she was the manager of. She sent the caseworkers to my house. You know, if anything's a conflict of interest, that is. I mean, if they truly wanted to sit there and say that they were trying to be non-biased, they would have given every opportunity to give somebody else. Like, this woman and we battled. I was mad. I reported her to the higher ups. Nothing. Obviously, she got promoted. I have been since told that she's been let go, as is 90% of the caseworkers I've ever dealt with. I was not playing. I was not doing this anymore. If they're not going to sit there and look at things that are in their face, and they're going to let their own bias rule them, they're not good caseworkers. A caseworker is supposed to go in, observe the situation, and then make suggestions. The primary goal is reunification. They are not supposed to go in there and immediately try and remove children unless there is a very, very good reason. And not just somebody's bullshit lie. Cops told me that they would take photographs of marks on children who slept on the floor. There is a alternative school in Farrell who, when my husband and I showed up after we got my stepdaughter, because that's where she put her, by the way, was this delinquent school. Because, again, it was, she's the problem and I'm not. We showed up for a meeting and they were surprised. And it was like, why? And they said, we're not used to parents actually being here. What? You asked me to come. Why wouldn't I come? And they said, you wouldn't believe some of the things that go on. They say 2 of the children here sleep on the ground. It's a cold concrete floor. And as long as they have some kind of turbo heater that, you know, could CO2, they're dead. As long as they have that, and that's their form of heating, they're fine. Let's just leave them there. What? And then you're coming to my house where I take good care of my kids. They have the best therapist. They have the best care. And you're going to... Like, can you... I have this term now in my head. Lock in. Can you lock in? Like, come on. What is wrong with you? Why aren't these children getting your attention? During my recent session with my stepson, the therapist was trying to explain to him, like, you had it bad, but I've seen worse. And he was explaining to him that prior to him being there was another child who was there who was literally locked in a dog cage. And he had to reach out through the bars in order to grab, like, pieces of cereal off the floor in order to eat. And this woman that was their mother did this for years to him and his sister. And eventually he became like my eldest stepson. He had no feelings. At that point, it's why? Why have any feelings at all? No one loves me. My eldest stepson, you know, told me all kinds of things. I mean, I can go down the list and we could be here for hours. He had told me that this woman had shown him videos. She does drugs with him. Oh, by the way, he's moved back in with her because... Yeah. She still does drugs with him. I mean, this woman touched my husband when he was little. She does drugs with his son for years. He swears up and down she's never touched him. However, he wouldn't take showers anymore because she'd always walk in the bathroom. And that's exactly how she tried to touch my husband. All the time. She'd always try and justify it. Oh, it's okay because I'm your mom. Or, you know, adoptive mom. Whatever she is. She's Cindy to me. That's what she'll always be. She doesn't deserve those titles. We don't even talk about her in the house. Because the idea of her just stresses everybody out. Because she's not in jail. And the reason she's not in jail and the police have apologized to us is because unless she admits what she did, it's a very hard-pressed thing to do, because the kids have made up so many lies. Because they followed her directive to lie in the first place. Now they're not credible. So even though we believe them, and Child Services believe them, and the police believe them, the officer actually told me a percentage. We have to be able to prosecute them at least 90%. And then he said to me, why don't you sue her? And I said, what? And he said, well, you only have to have 50% proof in order to get a civil suit done. And I said, why would I do that? One, she has nothing I want. And two, that would just drag us through that would give her opportunity to lie more. I want her in jail. Terrorizing children for 40 years. Still out there. Mom's dead. Never got prosecuted. You know, it's no wonder these kids just don't understand the justice system. Because why? Their mom did it to them all the time. Why is it a big deal if they act out? That's their process of thinking. Reactive Attachment Disorder is... they sabotage their relationships on purpose because they don't feel they deserve them. They don't think they're real. Have you ever had that feeling with your own C-PTSD or PTSD where you feel like things are too good? Like it's almost suspicious. Like, things are going too well. Where's the other shoe gonna drop? I have that all the time. I still do. Actually, things have been so peaceful. I mean, I have the rain, and yeah, my basement is flooding, but I'm still, like, hunkering down. Even this video. What if she sees this video and she calls CYS again? I mean, my stepchildren are older, but she can make something up on my younger ones. She has no access to them at all. Ever. Ever. My own daughter, my eldest daughter, whenever she's asked about her past, she has written it in spades at school. They are fully well aware at the school. This woman is not permitted on the property. She is not allowed near anybody. She doesn't have any criminal charges, but everybody's aware of what she did. Because these kids have said it numerous times. It is documented very well. But, they sabotage their relationships. They feel if somebody's too, clingy, and I mean clingy meaning if they send them a text every day, or if they say, hi, how are you? They try to destroy that relationship. Like, oh, no, you're not supposed to be this way. Cut it off. My stepson did that a lot with his bestest friend. I would see it all the time. He would say, he never wants to hang out with me. He never wants to hang out with me. Literally, he hung out with him 2 days ago. Like, you don't need to see him every day. And then he went to go stay with this kid, which from there, that's when he moved back into this woman's house. But he would call and he would say, now my friend wants me to go out every night. I want him to leave me alone. Literally, it maybe had been 2 or 3 nights. And again, he would foresee everything as personal. It was a personal attack to them, to him in particular. He would blow all his money on something, and then he would ask the friend to, fund some of his groceries, and the friend would say no, because he misspent his money. However, he says, oh, you don't care about me. Just instant. And then the gaslighting following the manipulation of, well, I've done all this for you in the past. Why don't you want to do this for me? That's learned behavior from both these women. I've always said, when I have to put these people on a scale, Cindy is the top. The difference between Cindy and their mother, Catherine, is Catherine had a soul. As twisted and terrible as that sounds, I don't believe Cindy has a soul. Because to her, they're nothing but objects. They're there for her convenience, and if she feels like she wants to stir the pot, she does. In fact, actually, my stepson had called me last week and was freaking out because she stole all his marijuana and his money. And he was absolutely livid because she would sit there and say, nope, I didn't do that, and if you don't believe me, you can get out of my house. So now it's being homeless or, accept it. He had actually threatened suicide that day multiple times. I had to call the crisis center. I contemplated it for a while, but I couldn't give him a solution he wanted. And by the way, she didn't, like I said, she didn't steal that marijuana to keep it away from him. She did it to keep it for herself. And frankly, I think she enjoys watching him squirm. She seems to get a rise out of it. She always does it. Why? She used to do this even when my husband and I would tolerate her. Way back in the day. I was pregnant with my son. My oldest son. It was Christmas. And we tried really hard with the biological mom to make arrangements. And I tried to appease her by saying, what day do you want? You can have Christmas. If you want to spend Christmas with the kids, take it. We'll pick another day. What day do you want? So that way we're not interfering. Because she always, again, she's not the problem. We are. Everybody else is. So we would, bow down. No matter if we didn't want to or not. It was just, let's just say what she wants to hear. So that way the kids won't have a problem. Because it was always about, what can we do to lessen the hurt that these people put on these kids? Because obviously child services isn't doing nothing. So the best options we have when, we're filing for custody and they're lying and saying that we're the problems the whole time. And of course the judge errs on the side of caution. And, protection orders. They didn't even grant that protection order, by the way. Can you believe that? Because I didn't put my stepdaughter on it because she wasn't living with me at the time. Even though she blatantly said those things, the judge said, I'm sorry, I can't grant it. They granted one for my stepdaughter after that, for the mom, because she was staying with the mom at the time. However, mom, when she got to the protection order hearing, Cindy had said, to the judge with her attorney, instead of having this protection order, how about we just separate the kids? I'll keep your son and you get your daughter. And then we'll just never see each other again. And mom in the room said, oh, okay. Because she didn't want her son anyway. She very much told him so all the time. It's no wonder that kid doesn't think he's loved. She even told him before she died, don't come to my funeral. I don't want you there. Not even because she feels like, it's going to hurt him. It's, you weren't there when I wanted you to be. Therefore, if you don't want me in life, you can't have me in death. And it was like, wow. Wow. Actually, the day we lost their dad, she showed up on the door, and he said to me that he looked at her in the face and says, wow, my dad's gone, and now you decide to show up? Get out of my face. And he shut the door in her face. Probably the biggest thing he cheers about, where he got to stand up for himself a little bit and said, you know what? If I have to choose between two evils, he actually thought at the time Mom was worse. And I mean, she was no angel, obviously. But in a twisted sense, very twisted sense, she loved the kids. Mom actually had a twisted, warped idea because of her own trauma that she couldn't face, that she was doing a good thing by hurting them, by trying to control them, by making them feel like they owed her. She would say, you know, if somebody hurt them, she was going to destroy that person. Even if it was one of the siblings. And unfortunately, that happened a lot. The younger sibling, my stepson, would say that my stepdaughter was doing A, B, and C anytime, you know, he wanted to be loved. So he would say, hey, Mom, Sissy beat me. Mom wouldn't even hesitate. She'd jump up, chase my stepdaughter into her room, and start beating the crap out of her. And then she would go back to my stepson and say, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, I love you so much. I'm so sorry she did those bad things to you. And she didn't even do anything. She created hatred between my stepchildren. Same with this new person. She did the same thing by saying, you know, hurt them back. They would just go up there and say, oh, they hurt me. And she'd say, go get them. And in this case, my stepdaughter tried to get away. And so she held her down and said, now you can do it. You know, and of course, CYS, that's perfectly fine. I hate that department. They have a purpose. I don't know, you know, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make these people actually, you know, do their job right. I think, you know, I have opinions about why they are the way they are, but sometimes I think they're either burnt out or, you know, who knows? I don't know. I just know that this is unfortunately very common. And it is so not talked about that people don't know it's common until they're put in this position. And then when you try to talk about it and you say, child services came in and they took these two kids away, they'll go, well, you must have did something wrong. What? Whenever my husband and I would fight for these children, people would always ask him, well, why did you lose them in the first place? He didn't lose them. He's always had some sort of custody to them. We didn't even know it because, you know, this woman would tell my husband over and over again that she had full custody of the children. He had nothing. It wasn't until later, because I didn't have the know-how to file for court paperwork or get copies of anything. I had no idea what to do when I was younger. I was flying by the seat of my pants. Literally. It was just, how can I protect them? What can I know? What can I learn? And it wasn't until they were about 10 and 9 years old that the caseworker showed up at my house and she made another accusation. And then she said to us, he has partial custody to his children. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you saying that at any point when these kids came to visit, we could have kept them? We could have kept them here? He had partial physical custody the entire time? And my husband just believed her because he was too afraid to question anything else about her. In fact, the moment I started standing up to her is when all these phone calls started happening. And he actually got mad at me and said, why did you question her? And I said, because she's hurting the children. I don't care what she does to me. But then she started going after my children. And then I had to make really messed up decisions where I had to decide, triage. Because when CPS is called, not only do they have to disrupt your day and show up at your house and search your kitchen and, their bedrooms, and, you have to give them a tour every effing time. And I know I've already cussed, but trying not to. Trying. Not only do you have to do this little dance with them every single time they show up, during the school year, they go to school and they rip your kids out of class. Over and over and over. And there is nothing anybody can do to stop them because they have that legal right. They have the legal right to walk into the school, here's my badge, go in, find the kid they're looking for, and pull them out of class and then question them. They're technically not supposed to use certain languages when they're questioning the children. But, after the 20th time, my kids were done. It was, why are you coming here again? Leave me alone. My parents aren't bad. They're not doing anything wrong. That woman is lying. Leave me alone. My daughter is about to be 18. Again, when people ask her about her past, she says it in spades. She is literally wrote in her paperwork that she wishes that woman would die. Because she caused so much pain to her, and she took so much from her by doing what she did to my stepchildren, to our family, that she's angry. I don't blame her. I tried to tell her, and I've said this to my stepson multiple times when he's in these moments too, where he's just sad. And he doesn't really say he's sad. He just says, I'm done with life. He's very blunt about it. He just says, I'm going to go find a bridge and go jump off of it. He just says, I'm going to go jump off a bridge. I'm going to go find a bridge. And that's when I had to call crisis. I just say to him, honey, you didn't deserve what happened to you. I'm sorry that it did. I wish I could go back. I wish I knew the things that I know now that I didn't know then. I wish I knew them. I wish I would have known what to do. I wish people would have listened. I wish a lot of things. I can't change it. We are where we are today. I said, if I had my way, I think the exact phrase I used was, things would be sunshine and sprinkles and rainbows. Your dad would be here. Those two women would be in prison. You'd all be safe. Never having to experience that kind of life. You'd have love and attention and everything you all deserved. But that's not the hand we were dealt. And unfortunately, we are in this position where we have hard choices to make in life now. And it's not your fault. I will say that over and over and over. And he wrote back to me, I didn't deserve any of this. I didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes he'll even say, I wish you guys would have just, not tried to help me. If you didn't try to help me, she wouldn't hurt me so much. I think that's why that line with Gabriel Fernandez hurts so much. Because I do feel that way. Like, what if we have done nothing? Would she have hurt them that bad? Maybe it would have been less. At least with that woman. We actually tried the approach with mom when she got my stepdaughter. We left her alone. Because if we wanted to see my stepdaughter, we were smothering mom. We were bothering her too much. We were harassing her. She literally would call the police. Because she texted us at 3 a.m. and we respond back, listen, it's 3 a.m. Can we talk in the morning? And she would respond, you're harassing me. If you text me one more time, I'm calling the police. And we'd say, okay. Literally say a text back, okay. And the cops are calling us. Hey, why are you texting her at this time of night? What do you mean? She's texting us! We said, okay. What? Go away. And 9 months later, CYS is coming to my door again. And we call them CYS here in Pennsylvania. Everywhere else is CPS or DIFS or, you know, CYFS, I think, Children, Youth, Family Services. We call them Children and Youth Services. That is what we call them here in Pennsylvania. So if you ever hear somebody use the term CYS, it is a Pennsylvania term. I don't really know another state that uses it. Maybe there is one, but I haven't heard of one yet. Anyway, so CYS is showing up at my door, and they're like, hey, do you want her? And I'm like, what? Why? And they said, because she's claiming that she's homicidal towards her baby sister and that she doesn't want her anymore. And frankly, we think she's abusing her, but we can't prove it. But mom doesn't want her. And she wants us to have her signed up to a facility where she'll just live there. But we don't want to do this. This is one of the caseworkers I did appreciate. They came to us because dad is the legal parent. And they can't just assign a child away to a facility. You know, you can't just say, I don't want her anymore, drop her in this place and leave her. You have to go through dad first. And so we told mom, again, to appease her, you know, we'll take her. And she's like, but I don't want to give you custody. She didn't want to give us any control. So she said, well, I'll give you guardianship. But if this doesn't work, you have to put her in that facility. We just said, fine. So we took, we literally wrote up our own little paperwork and had us sign that, where we said, listen, if she's out of control in this amount of time, we wrote in there, consider putting her in this facility. We were never going to do that. Ever. And plus we knew that she was the problem, not my stepdaughter. My stepdaughter had issues 100%, but she was the one who caused them. And yeah, so we had agreed actually a 2-week thing because we needed to get a bed. We didn't have one for her. We needed to get things ready because nobody had given us anything before, and we weren't even allowed to visit her most of the time because it was disruptive to mom's time, whatever. And honestly, if we tried to take them out anywhere, CYS was at our door the next day making accusations. It was like, what do you mean? They would say, oh, you brought them back to the house and you did A, B, and C to them. It's like, first of all, they didn't come to the house. We picked them up from there. We took them to the zoo in front of everybody. I have pictures. Look, in the picture, the oldest boy, my eldest stepson, has a phone. If anything bad would have happened, he would have called. They had a blast. We went to Denny's afterwards, and then we took them straight home. They didn't even go to the house. It became a question of, should we just stop? Should we just back up? Obviously that didn't work because 9 months later they're back at our house and they, you know, we needed to get things ready for her. Thankfully, my husband had been in a very bad car accident, and we had received a settlement from that car accident. It took about a year and fighting the insurance company, you know, because somebody hit him head on in our lane, and that person didn't even have a license, didn't have insurance, their car wasn't even, their registration was up. You know, and the guy admitted that he did it, so I don't know why we had to fight the insurance. Anyway, that's another story. But we had received a bit of a settlement, and all of that settlement went to providing everything we needed for her. And it wasn't even that big, honestly. I mean, people think you go to court, you get millions of dollars. No, that's not how it works. It'd be lovely if it did. I wouldn't have so many problems, maybe. I don't know. Money can't solve everything. Even when I did have some, I still have these problems. Anyway, we had agreed to 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We had a set date. The next day, mom's calling us. She's on her way. I don't want her anymore. Take her. Comes to our house, drops her on her porch. She's barely in any clothes. I mean, literally like tattered clothes. And it looked like it was one of the mom's shirts that she just like cut the sleeves off of or something. And it was hanging. And she gave me a pink tote with no cover. And she said, these are her clothes. I pulled it in the house. When I pulled the stuff out of it, It was 3 shirts that had been peed on by some kind of animal. I assume they had a chihuahua for a minute. Probably that. And a sheet that was literally torn from the seam. Like, I couldn't even understand. Like, why did you give me this? So it's like, well, now we gotta go get clothes. You know, I had to do the same thing with my stepson. Again, when his mom died and I got custody of him and I showed up to get him, this woman had thrown everything of his out. He had a Walmart bag of his, you know, his Xbox and 3 pairs of shorts. He didn't even have any shirts, socks, underwear, nothing. I actually got back to the house thinking maybe something was in there, at least his medication. His medication wasn't even in there. I had to call this woman and be like, yo, I need his meds. You can't have those. I don't care what excuse you give me. Those are legally his medications. Give me them. And she'd be like, well, you didn't give me enough time to pack. Woman, I said in court, you had an entire 24-hour day. You didn't even... What do you mean pack? It's a Walmart bag with 3 pairs of shorts. I gave you a day. In a day, I could have filled up like 20 Walmart bags. Or at least made a pile somewhere. I didn't even care if it was in bags, boxes, or whatever. She could have just handed it to me. No, she threw it all away. She wouldn't let anybody have anything. She even took Mom's car. That car was meant for my stepson, and she sold it under those false papers. That's how easy bad people get away with crap all the time. They know how to lie. They're good at it because they know you are going to care about their feelings. You're going to be empathetic to their situation. They're not empathetic. I had to buy all of his clothes. Thank God that was the year of the child tax stuff, or I probably wouldn't have had it. And thank God he was close to his dad's size, and I had his dad's clothes still. And then the oldest one, 18 years old, comes running to my house. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. No, take that back, 8. I'd run into him once at the park, and he actually cried and gave me a hug when he was 13. And the mom, this is a few times the mom was actually helpful. And I say that with a grain of salt. He'd come home from the park happy that day that he saw us, me and his dad. He wanted so badly to hang out with us. He was so scared. He showed up 2 more times at the park at the same time because we had swimming lessons, so it was scheduled. So every time we came, he knew we were going to be there. So he would take his bike and he'd leave this woman's house, and he'd come there to see us. And we made it a point to make sure we're out in public. Look, it's that hands up situation. It's terrible. I mean, I actually asked the detective, how can we protect ourselves and still spend time with this child? Because he wants to spend time with us, but we don't want to put ourselves in a predicament where she can make something else up. Oh, by the way, she's still dead. Didn't matter. Because again, CYS can't just ignore a report, or so they say. They do it all the time. They're not supposed to. They do it all the time. I felt so targeted by this department. In their eyes, it's, well, she's calling so many times, there must be something wrong with you. No, there's something wrong with her. Anyway, the 3rd time at the park, we showed up, there she was. And their mom told me and the dad while we were talking one time, the reason she knew to show up was because he was happy. And she felt that was suspicious. Why is he happy? What's wrong with him? Why are you so happy? And she questioned him in front of Mom, and he didn't want to say. And then eventually he just, she's practically yelling at him, and he goes, I saw Dad. I saw Dot and Jess at the park. And she got mad. So the third time that we saw him at the park, he wasn't smiling anymore. In fact, actually, I had called my other son's speech therapist, and I asked her to come to the park, do his therapy at the park with us, because I was very uncomfortable, and I wanted a third-party person there. And I knew my speech therapist was very well aware of the situation for my younger son. And so she came to the park, and while, you know, we were doing swimming lessons with the older kids, and she was doing speech therapy with my younger one, here comes my stepson. He is literally looking like this. He won't even look at me. He's face down, eyes to the ground. He's got his hands behind his back. And he looks at me and he says, "Why are you telling lies about my grandma?" And I put my hands on his shoulders and I said, well, I said his name. I don't want to repeat it right now. But I said, you know, you don't have to come over here and do this just because she says so. You know, if you tell the truth, you'll be okay. And he said, I didn't come over here because she told me to. I came here because I brought myself here. I said again to him, it's okay. I know what she's doing, and I'm sorry. But you don't have to do what she's telling you to do. And then he turned around, hands down in front of him. I never saw what was in his hands. If I had to guess, it was probably a phone. He was probably recording because she told him to. But I look up. I'm watching him walk back to her. He's still head down. You know that demeanor. You know that fear. When they're scared to death, they can't even look at you. He was looking down so much that the speech therapist actually thought he was talking to the baby in the stroller. She kept saying, what was he talking to the baby about? And I said, he wasn't talking to the baby, he was talking to me. She's like, but he was doing this. And I was like, yeah, I know. He couldn't look at me. But he walks back over there. He's still got his head down. He's obviously telling her something. She looks at me, grabs his arm, and they leave. I called the detective, like, hey, this is what happened. Sorry, can't do anything. What? Come on. Don't you even want to try? This is why I won't do these videos in front of my stepchildren. This will re-trigger them because this pisses them off. Just knowing they went through this and nobody did anything to stop it. I mean, we tried. I mean, I used to get to the point where I would say, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'd say, you know, there are plenty of things I can do and I can break the law doing them to protect them. And I'm this close. Back then. Not now. I'm annoyed my stepson is there right now, but he's 20 and I cannot make that choice for him. And honestly, I can't even have him here. Because when he was here, that chaos that he had when he was a child, I love him very much. But he would purposely set off his siblings and he would look at me and he'd say, I'm not used to calm. I can't have this. I can't have this kind of life. He needed his drugs. He needed his, I can do whatever I want. I can spend whatever money I want. And I can not get a job. You're supposed to take care of me because I had a bad childhood attitude. He would literally go up to his sister and call her fat just to see her freak out. My youngest stepson did his whole I'm going to kill myself thing. And the older one would say, do it. And then I would have to call somebody. My stepson was very good at baiting people into a fight. So he could say, oh, I'm the victim. See, this is the problem with them growing up with this person that they had. he was with the mom the most. He was the only child that wasn't removed. So he got full time with mom the whole time. And I mean, she did coddle to him every time. I mean, she only paid attention to him when he was bad. But that's all he had to say was, somebody's hurting me. And then mom would be like, oh, I need to protect you. So of course he would lie all the time. They actually removed him from public school because they said not that he was aggressive, but because, you know, he would do okay during the day, but when it came to lunch and all the kids are coming out into the hallway at the same time, he would literally throw himself down and scream just to get people to look at him. He was that desperate for attention. That is reactive attachment disorder. That is, I am going to get attention and I don't care how, because I need it. And I don't know what else way to get it, because they were not loved. They were not taken care of. They had everything go wrong. And you wonder why all these prisoners are like this. 9 times out of 10, they were abused. They were showed a life without love. They were showed a life without empathy. They were ignored to the extreme. I'm not talking about, like, you know, even my level of abuse. Like, my level of abuse is bad. And I'm super emotional over it. And I wanted attention. I did. I really did. I wanted somebody to love me. But there was a point where I started thinking about, you know, well, there became the I'm worthless type attitude. And, you know, my life isn't worth anything, so I need to, you know, use what time I have for other people because their lives are worth something. You know, it's terrible. Honestly, it's still a mindset even in my head today, which is why I do the Find a Grave thing. That's why I volunteer to give information to anybody who will ask, because I want to help them. I don't want them to have this kind of life. I want them to have information that I didn't have to help themselves. I actually dedicate myself also to a CPS group. Now, I'll tell you, some of those ladies are crazy. Some of them really do have problems, and they probably shouldn't have their children. They're no different than my my stepchildren's biological mother. But there's a lot of them in there that are unfortunately in my position, where it was, why isn't anybody listening to me? Because you sound crazy. And these other people would say, oh, they're selling your children to the black market, blah, 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 blah. You know what? There probably are some bad CPS workers that do that. I wouldn't put it past them. I wouldn't. There's so few that actually are there to do the job, to protect children, that I wouldn't put it past. Especially big city ones. You know, forget that. I mean, I'm in a local, like, Amish community type area. We got these ones. I can't imagine what it's like in New York City or Pittsburgh or Seattle or Sacramento. I mean, God, what are those CPS workers like? That building must be overflowing. And their primary focus is paperwork. And you wonder why kids slip through the system. I know I spent this video harping about my stepchildren. I'm just thinking about them today. I'm thinking about, you know, the troubles that they're having still to this day. And those women deserve to be called out for what they did. I'm sure Cindy eventually will see this and she'll call somebody else. She always does. Thankfully, my videos aren't that popular. So, and she's getting old. I won't throw a party when she dies. And I've always said I wish she'd step in front of a bus. And I have no problem saying that. They always say hate is reserved for, you know, the worst people. Never say the word hate. I hate her. She's the only one I will say I hate her. I'll say I hate certain systems. And I do. I find them useless. They never did any good for me. They didn't do any good for my children, my stepchildren. In fact, they added to their trauma. They added to mine. But mine's not as bad as theirs, because their whole life was that. I mean, I had a different whole life experience. My dad's gone, so I can be empathetic to their mom being gone. My dad was bad. He made really bad decisions in my life, but he was not as bad as their mom. And their mom wasn't even as bad as this other woman, Cindy. I would like to get into a further discussion about something else that they caused and took from me and my family that has caused detrimental harm. But I know that that will extend this video into probably another hour or two. I will get to that story. That is just, honestly, sad as this sounds, all of that is minor compared to the coup de grace of what they did. And I don't even blame the mom so much as I do Cindy for this one. Like I said, she stepped in front of a bus, I wouldn't be sad. I'm not going to push her. My stepson will always say, well, I will. And I'm like, no, dude, don't do it. She ain't worth it. Honestly, she likes playing victim. You just give her what she wanted. So, I won't be doing that. And when she goes, I'm not going to be sad. I'm not going to throw a party either, because she ain't worth it. I even irritate myself saying her name, because it gives her attention. But I'm not going to sit here and, all the terrible things she did to my husband. She still will post on his birthday. Oh, I miss him so much. Bitch, you're the reason he's gone. She is the reason he's gone. And again, that will take another story. That will take longer than this. And I need to be emotionally stable for that one, because I won't be. I need to be okay before I start that one. So I'm going to end this one here. Next one won't be about that either. So, I mean, if you're looking forward to that one, give me a minute. I'd like to, feels like it's jumping ahead. I think I'm going to focus on I'll focus on the next one just being about, maybe a little bit of C-PTSD. Maybe I'll talk more about Reactive Attachment Disorder, or RAD for short. Also know that those kind of symptoms from those also mimic other symptoms. A lot of people, my husband was diagnosed with ODD and OCD and, intermittent explosive disorder, things like that. Those are fight or flight. Those are what those are. But because they were not aware of his trauma, they just thought he was bad. So ODD is highly overdiagnosed. Highly. Oppositional defiance disorder is not a disorder where a kid directly thinks, I'm going to choose violence today. That is incredibly rare. Children are not born that way. If they are, it is incredibly rare. It is something they are having a trauma response. You cannot cure ODD. You can treat C-PTSD and PTSD. You can't really even treat ODD. I mean, all you're doing is telling the kid they're bad, which reinforces that, well, then I guess I'll be bad. Is a very highly overdiagnosed disorder. So if you ever hear a kid has ODD, ask if anything else has been, you know, discussed. Because it's likely there's something else there. Maybe, and I'm not saying even the parents did it. There might be a condition where this child has been abused by somebody else and just hasn't been able to talk about it. That happens a lot. A neighbor, another relative, a friend. They feel bullied in school. There is something there that makes them that reactive. It is incredibly rare for a child to be born with ODD. Oppositional defiance disorder means they say no because you say yes. There's a reason they're doing that. If there is no reasons, then yeah, it's probably ODD. But there's probably a reason that you just don't know about. They didn't know about my husband's until he was an adult, because he didn't even realize what was happening to him was abuse. He just thought it was normal, as I've discussed previously, where C-PTSD is accepting that this is your normal and you don't know any better. So that is what you grow up with. That is what you believe. And when you become an adult and you realize that's not it, you got to break a cycle that you grew up with. It's hard. It's so hard. And you even have to realize that it is abuse. And that's harder still for a lot of people. Because the idea, it shatters their world. Alright, so I'll leave that at this. And I thank you guys for watching. I love my kids. You know, if they're seeing this ever. And I'm sorry for what they went through. I wish, as I've said before, I wish I could do something to change it. I can't. So, thank you all. I'm going to go. It's still raining now. I got to go check my basement again. Hopefully it didn't flood. Please. Really hoping. Thank you guys. Bye.